Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, Maverick family. There I am, reappearing from behind the logo, plastered over my face after a day away. I apologize for last night. We had a little bit of a technical problem here, some internet issues. It prevented us from getting the show up the way that we normally do, but we are back in the saddle again and galloping off into a surreal world. And when I say that, I mean a neurotic world, a world wrapped in mystery, with unsolvable problems presented to us in a fashion that I believe is meant to make everyone neurotic. That is the subject for tonight's broadcast: government lies, or misinformation, malinformation, disinformation. You think you're awake. Are you? Which eye do you have open, the left or the right? When you turn your head and look the other way, or turn around, is your eye still on the left or the right? And which one is open? Do you have both of them open? Are you sure? Seems to me the activities of the deep state, the government, have been on full display this past week in a variety of ways, but perhaps most explicitly during these hearings into UFOs with former intelligence officer Mr. Grush, who claims that non-human biologics have been recovered from flying crafts, which he alleges are in possession of the United States government. True or not? Perhaps he's not lying, but not telling us the truth. Think about it. If you can, if you dare. We're going to get into all of that tonight. Throughout the conversation, we'll touch on some of the news of the day, all of the stories I think that we're going to focus on this evening are related to this subject matter. And after the program at 9 p.m., Lori will be along with Strange Bedfellows, her program, where she will be speaking with people from the Schiller Institute. That's an organization that was founded by Lyndon LaRouche, accused by some in the mainstream media, some within conventional government, of being a conspiracy theorist. Mr. LaRouche no longer with us, having passed away a few years ago, but his movement continues. And the things that he spoke of during his time on Earth tie right into what we're going to be talking about tonight. So while I'll kick this conversation off tonight and recap some of what happened during that UFO hearing, the conversation will continue even beyond what we're going to touch on here during the Maverick News broadcast, the main portion of this evening. It's going to, some of this stuff, it's going to challenge your sense of reality. It'll challenge what you think you know, what you understand. It will challenge you to challenge yourself. We'll get into it when I come back right after this. Don't go away. More ahead.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Welcome back. Here I am. When I worked in mainstream media, radio, print, television, for a lot of years, the thing that drove me crazy was stories that we were told to do that would drive people crazy, make people neurotic. If there was a snowstorm, it was always the biggest snowstorm ever. I never lied to people. I always pushed back just a little bit. So I never lied because I always took exception to the practice of sensationalizing things. It's always gone on in media, always. It goes on right now. And it's not just a mainstream media thing. There's all kinds of clickbait out there where independent people, independent streamers, influencers, people who call themselves journalists, just post stuff sensationalistic in nature to get people to click. They want attention. 2 nights ago, we were running video of Britney Spears dancing in, what was that? It wasn't underwear. It was like a showgirl thong bikini, whatever thing. Well, she flipped her ponytail thing around on her head. She's looking for clicks too. She survives on that. Media, it's all about audience. I'd be nothing if it wasn't for you guys being out there right now watching the program. Otherwise, I'd be sitting here speaking into a vacuum, talking to myself, listening to myself rattle off about whatever I'm rattling off about tonight, which is neuroses. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. It bothers me when I see it, but it's gone way beyond that. Of course, we've seen mind control experiments conducted. We know that's all real. How extensive is that? How far has government gone with things like MK Ultra mind control experiments? Well, we know that there's an actual lawsuit in Canada over this. It's real. It's a real thing. The Nazis in World War II conducted experiments in this regard. We've seen all kinds of experiments conducted over the years. Is there mass mind control going on? I would say, yeah. You know what they call that? They call it social media. Television was powerful in that regard. You're seeing these techniques used in film and in radio and print journalism and print in books and any kind of media. It's propaganda on one level, but they've taken things to a whole new level where they're spinning things up, and it's not just on one side. I'm just going to suggest to you that you are being bombarded all the time. Case in point, what happened this past week with these UFO hearings? Well, we saw Mr. Grush, intelligence officer, testify before this committee, Congress, that he has seen, or hasn't seen, that's sort of the point I'm about to make, is he claims that there are flying craft, apparently some create non-human technology in the possession of the U.S. government, and that the U.S. government has also recovered non-human biologics, leading people to believe that out there are actual aliens. So the question is, do you believe him? Is he telling the truth? You see, here's where things get neurotic. If he is telling the truth, and his claims that the government has been in possession or has been investigating this kind of thing since at least the 1930s, which is what he said, and that they've been involved in this multi-decade program to suppress this kind of information while at the same time developing it, then the government's lying. So somebody's lying on one side or the other. Either it's real or it isn't. The government was either lying, saying that it didn't exist, or he's lying now, saying that it does exist. one way or another, somebody from the government is lying. And lie is not too strong a word in this particular instance. And so today we're getting pushback from some people within the establishment and some people within NASA. And there's well, it's a, what can I say? It is an organization called Arrow, and it's looking into unexplained aerial phenomena. And it's Dr. Sean M. Kirkpatrick has written a letter in response to what we've seen during these hearings this past week, and he issued this letter today. Pushing back against what we've seen and calling actually some of this stuff insulting. Let me just bring this up for you. I have the letter right here. I had it there. I have so many things to share with you tonight. I have a lot of tabs. There it is there. So here's his letter pushing back. Get it up on the screen. Right there. This is Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. He says, let me begin by saying that the following are my own personal observations and opinions, which do not necessarily represent official DOD or IC positions. Yesterday, the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs held an open hearing on UAP, during which a government cover-up of extraterrestrials was alleged. I wholeheartedly applaud congressional efforts to get to the truth about what UAP are and the risks to both pilot safety and national security. I am also absolutely committed to transparency on both the historical mission and the operational mission. As the director of Arrow's amazingly talented, devoted, and highly motivated team, however, I cannot let yesterday's hearing pass without sharing how insulting it was to the officers of the Department of Defense and intelligence community who chose to join Arrow. This is the multi-organizational organization that is looking into UAPs, or UAP, as they say, or UFOs is what they are. Many with not unreasonable anxieties about the career risks that this would entail, that have been working diligently, tirelessly, and often in the face of harassment and animosity to satisfy their congressionally mandated mission. They're truth seekers, as am I, but you certainly would not get that impression from yesterday's hearing. Arrow was established by law to investigate the allegations and assertions presented in yesterday's hearing. Allegations by its witnesses of retaliation to include physical assault and hints of murder are extraordinarily serious, which is why law enforcement is a critical member of the Arrow team, specifically to address and to take swift action should anyone come forward with such claims. Yet, contrary to assertions made in the hearing, the central source of those allegations has refused to speak with Arrow. Furthermore, some information reportedly provided to Congress has not been provided to Arrow, raising additional questions about the true commitment to transparency by some congressional elements. The subcommittee, whose questions and oversight duties are irreproachable and in genuine need of answers, has never asked Arrow for an update on the reporting system, the historical review, the operations, and the 5&T strategy that Arrow leads and is undertaking. A rational person watching the hearing might reasonably assume that both the witnesses and the members had an understanding of the department and the IC's progress since the establishment of Arrow around this time last year, only naturally leading them to conclude that Arrow has been ineffective, non-transparent, and delinquent in its legislated mission. Arrow briefs the defense and intel committees regularly, and since the last NDAA, the Homeland Defense, 5&T, and several other committees as well. I am deeply disappointed at the denigration of Arrow's dedicated men and women hailing from the Department of Defense, intelligence community, and civil partners who are pouring their hearts and working this issue on behalf of Congress. Arrow has the authorities and resources necessary to execute this mission to meet congressional intent. And as we've stated before, Arrow welcomes anyone with knowledge of any of these allegations or programs to talk to us in a safe, secure, and appropriately cleared environment. Rest assured, Arrow will follow the data wherever it leads. Finally, to be clear, Arrow has yet to find any credible evidence to support the allegations of any reverse engineering program for non-human technology. Also, to be clear, none of the whistleblowers from yesterday's hearing ever worked for Arrow or was ever a representative to Arrow, contrary to statements made in testimony and in the media. So there's pushback. Now, I said that I thought that Mr. Grush appeared quite credible in his testimony before Congress. More credible there than he did in his sort of public debut on News Nation, where he made these assertions that non-biologics had been found, and these claims were made in this news program initially. You got to keep something in mind here. He's from the intelligence community. And what does the CIA engage in, if not misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, misdirection, deception? I mean, we're talking about a CIA that is accused of being involved in the assassination of an actual president of the United States, JFK. We are talking about a CIA that has been involved in the overthrow of governments in many places around the world, that was directly involved very clearly in 2014 change in government through a color revolution in Ukraine. Regime change. It's their stock and trade, spycraft. And today, you also have the Department of Homeland Security, which has expanded in size and scope since 9/11 to become this gigantic bureaucratic organization that overlaps and intertwines and weaves its way through these other lettered agencies. The deep state is deep. It's wide, it's powerful, forms almost like a shadow government in the estimation of some in the United States and maybe even globally. They're not entirely accountable because they work in the shadows. And the Department of Homeland Security alone now has 260,000 employees. That's over 250,000 people working in the Department of Homeland Security. What do they engage in? Spycraft, counterterrorism. I'm telling you, it is a strange time. So strange that, we have this going on, right? With Grush, this intelligence officer testifying, saying exactly what I just told you. I'm going to play the clip. I'm going to play this clip where he says they found biologics, non-human. Hang on a second here. Difficult to produce and host and talk and think all at the same time, but here we go. Here's his exchange. Come on, play.
Intelligent extraterrestrials.
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and you may or may not be able to answer my last question, and maybe we get into a skiff at the next hearing that we have, but who in the government, either what agency, sub-agency, what contractors, who should be called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in a public setting or even in a private setting? And you probably can't name names, but what agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call in to get these questions answered, whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you after the hearing.
Super. Thank you. And I yield back.
Thing is, no photos, no physical evidence, secondhand information, making claims, saying that he has spoken to people who have seen these craft. But where's the show me the beef? Like, where's the beef? I'm still waiting. And I'm not saying it's not true. What I'm saying is he could just be sitting there telling you the truth, but not telling you the truth. He could be telling you the truth, but still mislead you. He said they're non-human. He didn't say they are alien. What does that even mean? This is kind of weird. It's shadowy. More than that, can we really trust somebody from the intelligence community? You know, if you wanted to undermine or destroy a political enemy or destroy a political movement, how would you do it? I think most people would say, well, we have to attack them. We have to convince them that they're wrong. Counter their arguments. Get up in their face. Get out on the streets and protest. If you had a government that you thought was illegitimate, what would you do to correct it? Well, you get out in the streets and you protest and you show them why they're wrong. And you convince people that this issue and that issue and blah, 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 blah. I don't think that's what they're doing. Pretty sure they're not. So if the government wants to destroy a political movement, or if there's a shadow government that wants to control the government and destroy any opposition, what would you do? If you're an intelligence guy, you think infiltrators, and even more than that, mind control through propaganda, marketing, disinformation, malinformation. You don't convince people. You don't try to argue with them. You give them more of what they believe and take them down rabbit holes to places where they are chasing red herrings, so that they're chasing their own tails, chasing things that sometimes don't even exist, wasting their time. When I was in mainstream media, it was very apparent to me that we were making people neurotic with much of our reporting. which is why I was so opposed to much of what we were doing. We would run a story over here telling people to drink 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. And then moments later, run another story telling people don't drink the water. It's polluted. It's toxic. We'd have somebody on there saying that it's full of chlorine and fluoride and other chemicals, and could cause cancer and illnesses of all kinds. Don't drink the water. It'll kill you. But drink 8 to 10 glasses of water because you're probably dehydrated. What are you supposed to do with that? What do you think is going on here right now with this UFO stuff? The government's always denied it. Now you have a government intelligence guy sitting in a position where he appears to be very credible, testifying before a formal government organization, Congress, a hearing, which is also in just an appearance alone. The optics are very credible. So it makes it very believable. And then he is kind of presenting himself as a whistleblower who is in opposition to government, saying this is now the truth, without actually presenting any credible evidence, no physical evidence of any kind, saying they're non-human, but not really quite calling them aliens, but leading people to believe that that's what it is, and putting this information out there to lead you down some sort of a garden path to where I'm not sure, except maybe the only destination is mental chaos. Because then on the flip side, just today, we get the letter from Dr. Kirkpatrick, who is saying, we don't have any evidence like the evidence that he says he has, and we're the ones leading the actual investigation. And he's part of this big organization of all these different scientific groups, and they are looking into UAP, UFOs, whatever you want to call them. They're working through NASA, with NASA, and they have not rejected the idea that there might actually be alien life out there, and they haven't rejected the idea even that government might actually, or some department of government might be covering some stuff up. They are calling for transparency, at least they say they are. And here is now Dr. Kirkpatrick at a recent conference meeting of these scientists discussing UAP. Let me play this for you. Here it goes. This is Dr. Kirkpatrick in action.
To demonstrate potentially anomalous characteristics, AARO is approaching these cases with the highest level of objectivity and analytic rigor. This includes physical testing and employing modeling and simulation to validate our analyses and the underlying theories, and then peer reviewing those results before reaching any conclusions. AARO has shared these cases with the appropriately cleared NASA team members in order to discuss and help recommend potential scientific areas of study that NASA may want to take lead on. I'll underscore here, as I did before Congress, that AARO's work will take time if we are committed to doing it right. AARO is committed to the highest standards of scientific research integrity, as we know our partners at NASA are as well. Thanks again to NASA for hosting this public forum for UAP discussion and information exchange. And I'd like to turn to a brief presentation that includes some recently declassified footage and trends for discussion.
Okay, so we'll get into that in a moment. But, you know, this is not really anything new in a sense, because we've seen even, decades ago, other government officials come forward and offer to present the same kind of information, but there was such a stigma attached to all of this that they were just kind of dismissed, not taken seriously. And then there's this documentary called The Land of the Lost. Well, it's an interview with William Bill Cooper in 1999. This was from Anna Zetkus Smith. It is a documentary where she took a trip through the U.S. interviewing different truthers and about different conspiracy theories. Well, this is William Cooper Listen to what he's saying, a guy who was immersed in this stuff deeply, even back then in 1999. And this is kind of what I'm getting at. Well, not kind of what I'm getting at. This is exactly what I'm getting at here tonight. Listen to this gentleman right here. I think this is going to take you to a place of revelation, maybe. I hope so.
You think about aliens?
I don't think there are any. At one time, I thought that there were, simply based upon documents that I'd seen while I was attached to the intelligence briefing team, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet. At that time, and even for many years afterwards, I did not believe that the government would use me in that way. I had devoted my whole life to government service. I had been in the Air Force. I was in the Navy. I was a river patrol boat captain in Vietnam. I had proved myself. I had combat ribbons with the V for Valor. There was no doubt of my loyalty to my country. And maybe that's why it was so easy to use me, because I wouldn't doubt that what I saw was real. But over the years, I've done a lot of research. What I've discovered is there's no proof existing anywhere that extraterrestrials are real, or that have ever visited this planet, or that they exist anywhere in the universe. There is not one shred of evidence anywhere. There is lots of evidence, tons of it in fact, that there are a group of people collectively known as the Illuminati who want us to believe in some extraterrestrial threat from space so that they can cause a world government, bringing together of all the people to resist that external threat. And the first time that I saw any reference to that, I was reading some papers from the Carnegie Endowment Fund, and there was a record of a speech. It was a dinner for Viscount Ishii of the Japanese delegation, the Japanese imperial delegation, in 1917. And John Dewey was one of the speakers. And the first sentence out of his mouth, as I was reading this, almost fell out of my chair, because this was in 1917. And he said, the best way to cause all the people of the world to come together in one world government and end war forever would be if we were attacked by some other species from some other planet. And boy, that just clicked with me. And I knew that that this is just another scam. This is the age of deception. There's no doubt about it. And then 8 times during Reagan's administration, he inserted almost the exact same phrase into 8 of his speeches. And it's a scam. That's what I can tell you. What they call UFOs, these craft that fly around the sky, are real, but they're not piloted by some little green guy from some other planet. They're owned and operated by the United States of America for one, the Soviet Union for another, probably Great Britain, Canada. I think the first really operable ones were probably manufactured in Western Canada, in the wilderness, in a place especially built to create those machines, like we created the Manhattan Project, and the same kind of secrecy surrounded it. So the technology is real. It's been kept secret, and it's been used to promote this concept that there's an alien threat to this earth. The cattle mutilations I've discovered in my research are nothing more than what's left after the government does its secret tests on the low-level radiation leakage from its atomic weapons assembly plants and atomic power plants. It's a low-level radiation monitoring project. And if you look at what's missing in the cattle, you'll see that it's just as clear as day. They take the lips, they take the tongue, they take a 6-inch patch of skin, they core out the rectum, the colon area, where those kinds of things would collect. They pass through the digestive system. On female cows, they take the udder to check for low-level radiation in the milk. This is being passed to the calves. And these are all grazing animals that graze on the grass where the radiation falls when it falls from the air. And It's just an incredible deception. And I'm just amazed that people have fallen for it in the manner that they have in the absence of any proof whatsoever. I mean, they cite hearsay as proof.
Well, what about all of the alien abductions?
They're not abductions. They're the results of a tremendously successful and very sophisticated mind control operation, all of which has been in development. Well, they started working on those kinds of things since before World War II, but they have perfected them. On my website, I have a patent of a machine that can read your brainwaves, can recombine them in a computer and send them back to you and make you think things happened that never happened. I mean, you can't get a patent for something like that unless it really works. You have to prove it to the patent office. It works. A patent was issued. And this is just one of the things that snuck by them that hasn't, because when people invent things like this, they're sucked up by the government immediately, and then they're put behind the veil of national security and classified, and then nobody knows about them. But every once in a while, something sneaks by them. And when you do these searches in the patent office and the trademark office and in the copyright office, you come up with some real gems once in a while. And that was one. Also, the congressional investigations into the intelligence community has revealed the existence of these programs. And there's no secret about it. It's documented. Project Artichoke, Project MK Ultra, MK Naomi. I could go on and on and on all day long. And, if you had the time in your movie, we could lay out all the documentation, which is official government documentation, and prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that it's true. But that's what it is. It's not extraterrestrials coming down. The human body cannot pass through walls or roofs, or through windows that are closed. This is all the product of the imagination and people's willingness to believe something because they want it to be true. I don't know why they would want it to be true. You see, because if it were true, these are not friendly aliens. They're doing some terrible things to people. If I were to kidnap somebody, pass them up through the roof, and take them somewhere, and perform operations on them, and take samples of semen and ova from their reproductive organs, and plant thoughts in their mind, and all this kind of stuff, and then bring them back, guess where I'd be right now? In prison. It's kidnapping. It's criminal. It's a terrible thing. So there's a morbid sense about all this too, is that people want to be hurt for some reason. I don't understand that. But that certainly is something that somebody needs to look at. Why do people feel that this needs to be real? What in them says, I want to be abducted and abused and kidnapped and raped and all of this stuff against my will? Because they seem to take some kind of satisfaction that this is happening. And nobody's talking about the fact that this is a terrible thing to happen. If I were to do that to you, you wouldn't be too happy, would you? But somehow it's okay if an alien does it? I don't think so. It's all bullshit. It's a lie. And that's...
So where do you feel the hope for America lies?
Oh, this.
So that's enough of that. You can check out that full documentary online if you can find it out there. I've only found portions of it, but I'm sure that the whole thing is available. So you see, it's a war on for your mind, and they're winning. The problem is people think in two-dimensional terms. They think in terms of black and white, good versus evil, right versus wrong, left versus right. If fascism was bad, communism must be good. If this guy's lying to me, the other guy must be telling me the truth. When in reality, what we're dealing with is shades of gray across the spectrum. It's this guy's telling you some truth, but maybe not the whole truth. he's telling you truth in a way that is meant to deceive you. And this other guy over here is actually doing the exact same thing using a different spin on similar or even the same information. And that's why we have right now a situation where we have the government for years telling us that they can't talk about these allegations of UFO sightings and abductions and even alien life form remains having been recovered. And now we have someone from the government telling us just the opposite. Well, people from the government sit behind the person from the government, listening to the testimony and backing him up. At the same time, other government people coming forward now saying that that guy is not telling you the truth and he has insulted them. It's enough to drive people neurotic, and it seems maybe that is the objective. It's not about truth at all. And the people involved in this may not even be aware of the bigger objective. But you have all this conflicting information being fed to the public, all of it coming from credible government sources. Over here, the official government narrative sort of stays the same, but not really, because now they're open to it. And then this whistleblower comes out. And I mean, you've just seen the whole story laid out where it's all information in conflict without actually giving you any physical, tangible evidence to grab a hold of and say, there it is. There's the smoking gun. There it is. Public tour of the UFO next Tuesday. Media availability first on Monday for a preview. Interviews with the aliens on Wednesday. No pictures of aliens, no pictures of a spacecraft. It's gotten so wacky that the man accused of being the #1 conspiracy theorist in maybe the world is now the guy who is sitting there saying that the alien narrative is not real. You would expect that Alex Jones would be saying the opposite. He would probably be sitting there saying, oh yeah, aliens, they're coming down. The lizard people are here to eat your brains. But he's sitting here saying that Mr. Grush is basically full of beans. Listen to this. This is him on with Dark Journalist discussing the hearings into the UFOs.
Talking about. I'm not saying there aren't little green men somewhere in the universe. I'm not saying there isn't interdimensional stuff, but when you look at the story being put out in Congress, it's the same one that other whistleblowers put out over and over again that have been connected to a larger psyop. And these guys haven't seen aliens, they haven't seen crash sites, but they're being told it's there and it's above Congress and the secret shadow government. So right when the real shadow government, the intelligence agencies, the bureaucracies are being caught running our government, they're caught, that's real, running child sex trafficking, running drugs. Now we learn there's another group secretly working with the aliens. That's been the same psyop for so long, told to us for 60 plus years, 70 years by Hollywood. So we've got some amazing clips coming up. I want to get your take on this. Darren Beatty, who's a White House advisor to Trump and a professor, he texted, said, can I get on the show? He's usually hard to get on. This is a total psyop. If he can pop in, we'll see if that happens. But Dark Journalist, you've been watching this. We've got a lot of the clips here. Give me your analysis of this.
Well, it's good to see you, Alex. I'll tell you, this was definitely rushed, and they put this one up there. They wanted to run it in the summer. It was a trial balloon, and to see if they could pull this off. And one of the things that they had front and center there was the whistleblowers. But you'll notice in the audience there speckled all these intel people, and they're ready to push the whole UFO threat aspect of this, and they're using the conduit of the whistleblowers. So what they'll do is they'll have a couple of Navy pilot guys who have actually seen things in training programs or whatever, and then they'll plant in the middle of that an actual IC community whistleblower, quote unquote. And so we see James Clapper in the audience, and we see other figures who've been involved in this. the name of the game really is they've been working on this technology over 80 years, and they've kept that from the public. It's been outside of those channels. There are actual divisions within the government that are completely unknown to the public. It's just like the NRO originally, when it came out, we didn't discover its existence for 25 years. They're handling the UFO file, and the UFO file is completely, the oversight of the UFO file is handled by the same group that handles the ultra secret continuity of government program, which means you can't get any answers in a traditional congressional setting. So this is really a lot of cover and fluff on the surface.
So the conspiracy theorist is now more mainstream or conservative in view than the government intelligence whistleblower who's supposed to be going against the establishment, telling you that all of this stuff is basically real. And now you have Alex Jones and associates saying, don't believe it. But at the same time, they're giving you a narrative that is all steeped in cloaks and daggers and shadowy assertions and claims that the government is still covering a lot of things up, but I don't see any physical evidence there either, leaving us where? In a state of mental chaos, neuroses. They're making people neurotic. UFOs, if you believe in UFOs, you're crazy, but UFOs are real. And there were non-human biologics recovered, but aliens were not flying it. But it's alien technology probably, and it's been developed for 80 years. You see, you're going around in circles. This is what they're presenting to us all the time. Enigmas, problems that are not solvable, that allow them to present themselves, whoever they are, whether it's the government, the deep state, the political opposition, political groups, whoever it is, they present themselves as having a solution through government control or replacement of government or higher taxation or whatever it is. You pick your issue. Let's take climate change. Climate change, there's something that they can use that is an unsolvable problem. The climate is changing. It's all your fault. There's nothing you can do about it. But we have to do something about it. And so the political opponents to those who are engaged in and embrace the climate change narrative, the opponents to that say, well, that climate change, man-made climate change is a hoax. But at the same time, those same people, a lot of them, embrace the idea that the government is controlling the weather. So they, on one hand, man-made climate change is a hoax, but government controlled by people, they're controlling the weather through a variety of different methods. Pick your poison, whether it's HARP or chemtrails or magnetic forces or whatever it might be. And where's the truth in any of that? Where's the actual solution? Is there one? Not really. Over here, they're telling you we have to tax you more, and then we'll fix the problem, and you have to do with less. And over here, they're saying no. We need to somehow get a hold of this government and replace the blah, blah, blah. People are neurotic. They give you a problem that can never be solved. Climate change. It's not the only example. There are many of them. They get you coming and they get you going. There are aliens, there are no aliens. There are spacecraft, there aren't spacecraft. Yes, they're real. No, they're not. Well, they want you involved, and they do want you to report these things, and the pilots are now being encouraged to report them more if they see them. And here's Dr. Kirkpatrick again talking about how the public can actually help in this regard. But don't rely on your cell phones, and don't take all of those videos on social media at face value either. Listen to what he has to say.
Unclassified open source data. This is where, some of the public can be helpful. Imagery from an iPhone is generally not helpful unless you are right up on whatever it is you're looking at. However, some of the ancillary data that your iPhone provides, from location to speed to other phenomenologies, and more than one of those, can be very helpful. Right? Large-scale ground-based scientific instrumentation, evaluating how can I use some of these other instruments for detection. The FRB example was perfect, right? You have a bunch of large-scale instruments that were not designed for that, yet they picked them up because there was a microwave. Well, we have a surrogate target package of what we think these things are, at least from what we've got reported to us that was in the front slide. Understanding how can I evaluate that against all of these other instruments, and do any of them have a chance of picking anything up that would be helpful in tipping and cueing us to get other sensors on target. I think leading that evaluation of the scientific ground-based sensors would be useful. Also, the same thing for the Earth Sciences satellites, as we mentioned before.
So the bottom line here is that the public is, you're seeing more of this stuff, but you can't just take whatever you're seeing online and say, well, there's the proof. There's a video from a guy with a phone and 3 dots on it, or 4 little triangular things. And even what these pilots are seeing midair, their encounters, they may not really have an explanation. In fact, they just generally don't have an explanation. Those 2 Navy pilots who also testified alongside David Grush, the intelligence guy, at that hearing, I mean, they didn't actually have proof of anything either. They just said that, they hadn't seen technology like that before, and looked at them like maybe it must have come from some other place, but no actual evidence to give you, the truth of the matter, right? Which is really what we're looking for here. But will we ever get to it? My guess is maybe not.
I'm going to let
Dr.
this play
Kirkpatrick.
through. This is a newly released video. You'll notice there are 2 dots moving back and forth. There is a plane at the bottom that's moving across the screen, and now there are 3 dots moving back and forth. The moving back and forth is from the sensor and the platform that's collecting it. This is a P3 on a training mission in the Western United States. They picked these up and they tried to intercept and was unable to intercept them. Apart from that motion, and you'll see a little bit of defocusing from the sensor itself, there is no other oddity about this, except for the fact that they couldn't catch them. The reason they couldn't catch them is because after further analysis, it was shown that those objects were actually much farther away from the P3 than they thought. And in fact, when we went even deeper, looked at air traffic control data, we were able to match those to aircraft on a major flight corridor heading into a major airport for landing. This is the kind of thing that can spoof and or provide misperception of both very highly trained pilots as well as sensors, right? And this was reported as an odd grouping of 3 UAP. Right. That is not to say that the pilots didn't know what they were looking at, or they knew what they were looking at, but they weren't really sure. But it also is meant to say that when they're not sure, they're reporting it now. And that's what they're supposed to be doing. And then we have to go look at it. Next slide.
Okay. So I don't know if Dr. Kirkpatrick is part of the PSYOP or not. I can tell you that from what I've heard of him, he seems to be balanced, credible. What he's saying suggests to me that he's open to a variety of ideas, scenarios, open to the possibility that alien life might actually exist, but he wants actual proof, or so he says. And since he's heading up much of this investigation and he's saying that they haven't come across the proof or the evidence that Grush claims to have, I more neurotic. It's blowing everybody's minds, which is maybe exactly what the people above all of them have in mind. It's driving people kind of nuts. It's driving people kind of nuts. That is sort of the point. Let's take a little break. When we come back, more about how they're driving you nuts.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Today, truth is stranger than fiction. It really is. So what's in the headlines today? And this is why it's so easy for them to screw with people's minds, because they can tell you the truth and then tell you a fib or tell you something that's partially true or even true but not entirely truthful, a half truth, to then lead you down a garden path and into a rabbit hole and then twist you inside out and flip your reality around and get you all confused so that you are no longer a threat to them. They are neutralizing people through psychological manipulation. All they have to do is start by telling you the truth. Something like this. You know what this is? These are worms. Worms, dude. And dudettes. However you identify. However you care to identify today, these are worms. But these are really old worms, or so we are told. These worms are 46,000 years old. Scientists have revived worms, they say. They came from a time when there were woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, giant elks roaming the earth. So this is a roundworm of some previously unknown species found in the permafrost in Siberia. And they were placed into a dormant state through cryptobiosis. Naturally happened, and now 46,000 years later, scientists say that they found these things and, they just revived them. It was like, hey, little wormies, it's been 46,000 years. It's time to wake up. Wakey, wakey. It's 2023. The aliens are calling. Well, that's real, or at least they say it's real. Who am I to argue, right? Okay, so that's supposed to be totally real today. 46,000-year-old worms. I mean, I don't know. How do they know they're 46,000 years old? I guess they have ways, right? They dug down so far, it had to be at that level, and they do carbon testing and all of these things to determine how old that layer was. And then if the worms are there, and then they revive them, well, hello and good morning. Hello, world. 46,000-year-old worms. Oh, by the way, aliens are real. In the next breath, right? Or so they would say, just to get you jacked up. But is that real? I don't know. Here's so here's Dr. Kirkpatrick again, talking about how this is needed, these hearings, right?
This is what people would report, but it isn't necessarily
What
for
is
example,
real.
the size of the object or the speed or any of the rest of that. Do I understand that correctly?
Partially.
Okay.
So this is not all single sensor observations. Some of these are very much multi-sensor observations.
Okay.
And this is parameterized to cover the range of things for any given parameter, range of what's possible and what has been observed.
Okay. And then on the next slide, the one where you've got the, whatever
Or
it is, the meatball moving across the screen.
right, that one.
So was there any look at sensor artifact, data processing artifact? I mean, the first thing that whenever I see anything that's anomalous, I look at how was the data collected?
Yeah. So yes, these are so this is an EO sensor on an MQ9, and we understand that very, very well. So that is a real object. Absolutely. And
You mentioned that in partnership with academia, you also use AI ML techniques for existing data sets, or possibly some of them open source. Can you explain a little bit more what kind of AI ML techniques you're using?
She's too off, Mike. We're going to pull out of that. But it's enough this stuff is enough literally to drive some people crazy. And if you look back at what's happened, if you go back 4 years, most people wouldn't really entertain a lot of this stuff. I mean, they'd watch the X-Files on television, look at that pretty much strictly as entertainment, Men in Black, and not take any of it too seriously or worry about it too much. But then the lockdowns came. And then you end up with the legitimacy of government even being questioned, because various groups who have always held those concerns and beliefs that the government isn't even legitimate, they latched onto that, right? They really used it to accelerate their narrative. And all the while, you have also people out there saying, we have to save the country. We have to save the United States. We have to save Canada. But then in the next breath, when you listen to them, how do they want to do that? Well, they really just want to tear it down. So over here, they're saying we have to save the country. And over here, they're saying the country doesn't even exist. It's not real. It's not legitimate. We have to even arrest the politicians and take them out. So it's sort of, again, there's a level of neurotic thinking that goes along with that, And as a result, it's hard for some people to stay grounded because they can't make sense of a lot of these things. So in this past week, we saw this happened. These ladies and a 14-year-old boy died when they went into the wilderness. Let me bring up my notes here on this. So they were so upset that about everything that had been going on with the pandemic and the lockdowns, and I mean, you name it, right? The CBDCs and drag queen story time and the thing in the arm, the forced injections, all of these things, upset about it. So this family decided that they were going to go live off the grid in the wilderness. This was in Colorado, and it's ended up in a heartbreaking tragedy. Rebecca Vance, 42 years old. She was a private person, had always steered clear of social media, and was known for her reluctance to trust others easily. But when the COVID pandemic hit, she found herself isolated in a Colorado Springs apartment with her teenage son. Even when classrooms reopened, she continued homeschooling him. Then last summer, Vance, her son, and her sister Christine embarked on a bold vision to live disconnected from society, deep in the wilderness. I've spoken about this on this program before. This, how should I put this? This idea that is prevalent within, I would say, the freedom movement, the anti-government movement, where people are like, I'm going to disengage from society. When the crap hits the fan, I've got my bug out bag and I'm running into the wilderness and I'm going to make myself a lean-to and I'm going to eat the bears or whatever they think they're going to do. And I've said many times, guys, you got to stay grounded. I know things are crazy out there, but when the crap hits the fan, the best thing you can probably do is hunker down at home and take care of yourself and your family and just be prepared. But people have some crazy notions that kind of come forward when they and surface when they start to think of what they need to do to protect themselves and their family. So the friends of these folks, and these two ladies were sisters, and the one lady, of course, took her 14-year-old son with her, and they went off into the wilderness. Their bodies were discovered in a partially mummified state. They did exactly what I just said. They ran off into the woods. They decided they were going to disengage from society. Their relatives were concerned about them. They said, whoa, please reconsider. They said, no, we watched some YouTube videos on how to survive in the wilderness and we're going. And they did. And they had a lean-to. And it looks like what they were doing was they were trying to burn wood, twigs in tin cans in a lean-to to stay warm through the winter. And it appears they may have died from a combination of malnutrition and exposure, because they got it in their heads that things were so bad in society that they had no other option, and they had to get out of Dodge, get out of Colorado, get up into the mountains and live off the grid. No support. They died. Neutralized, man. I understand things are not as maybe they should be, as they could be. I understand we have some bad leaders some terrible politicians, some bureaucrats who don't do their jobs. I understand there's corruption. I understand all of these things. But at the same time, I also see, because of my background in media, I am very media literate. I see a lot of what is going on in ways that other people don't. It's because I've spent so much time behind the camera, behind the scenes, inside the media, actually seeing how politicians behave, what they're saying behind the scenes themselves, covering a lot of politics for decades. I kind of have, I think, a better bead on how the media works than the general public does, because it's been my business. It's been my living. It's been my craft. It's been my area of study. I've only ever worked in media since I was a kid. And I can see the mind manipulation that is going on. And in 1999, you saw William Bill Cooper say in that documentary that they had perfected mind control back then. And in that era, it was basically television that was the most powerful medium available to deliver messaging and psychological information, manipulative information. Now we have the internet, social media. They're bombarding you all the time with all kinds of information. Don't drink the water, but drink 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. Where have they got you right now? Where have they got me? I was caught up in a lot of this myself, I noticed. Finally kind of realized that it was affecting me on an emotional level, especially at the height of the lockdowns, where I could really see that the government was engaging in really terrible activity, enacting horrendous public policy. But where have they taken us over all of that time? I mean, just think about the way we think about everything now. Everybody is afraid to drink the water. Train derailments, feeding us information constantly about there's so much pollution spewing into the air that it's going to be a mass genocide. Don't eat the food, it's contaminated. Don't drink the water, it's contaminated. Don't breathe the air, that's contaminated. Everything you're doing, you can't live because they're going to kill you. Coming and going. It doesn't matter what you do. When you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you're sleeping, when you're awake, it doesn't matter. They're going to get you. Unsolvable problems. But are you really thinking rationally? Are you thinking emotionally about these things? Climate change. Man-made climate change is a hoax, but the government is controlling the climate. Which one is it? The aliens aren't real, but the aliens are here because they found which one is it? If the country is not real, don't pay your taxes. But you better pay your taxes or you're going to jail. Why is that? Because the country is real. Well, how real is it? It's not legitimate, but when they come and they have the police and they arrest you and they put you in jail, you find out how real it is. Well, is that real? I suppose it is, because the people support the government and support the court system, but at the same time, the court system is illegitimate because the government's not real and the country is nothing but a myth. Hello. Hello. Are you out there? Got to stay grounded, man, or you end up in the wilderness. It's not to say that everything they're telling you is the truth and that this is all a lie. I'm just telling you that there is so much crap being fed to us that people can't tell whether they're coming or going. And isn't that what that saying from the CIA is? How's that go? Once people can no longer tell the difference between what is real and what isn't, then they will have done their job. See, if you want to destroy your political enemy, you don't try to beat them. You join them. And you don't just join them, you give them more of the stuff that they want to hear. You feed it. And you feed the stuff that's true, and then you inject stuff that is so toxic, and it's like a little information nuclear bomb, or a bunch of them that they insert in there. And they feed you that information too. The stuff that's not quite true, that leads you down a path where they actually can drive you nuts to the point where you run out into the woods and die. Or to a point where, you do whatever they want you to do. You engage in activity to, you do their bidding, is what I'm saying. You'll do what they want. And they're doing it. I'm telling you, man, they're doing it on both sides. They're doing it on both sides. All sides. People get emotional. Look at how emotional this guy here in the orange shirt is confronting Trudeau. Is he thinking intellectually, or is he thinking emotionally? Is he right or is he wrong? I don't know. You can decide that. But look at the rage. Look at the rage.
Arrest this piece of shit! Arrest him! You're a criminal! You're a criminal! You're the reason why Mike is here! You can't get a fucking appointment, nothing! You're a piece of shit criminal! You need to be arrested!
You got the right one, I promise. Back up. Don't push me. Don't push me. Don't push me. Shit, pedophile. You just did. You're a loser. Still watching here.
What about a green deal, eh?
Run like you always
In Belleville, Ontario, Canada's Prime Minister. I'm surprised they let people get that close to him. But they did, again. And why are people that upset? Well, because of things like, well, let me show you. If you have kids, you might not want to let them see this. There's all kinds of this stuff out there every single day now. This is Cardi B on Twitter. Again, this is like, in my estimation, softcore pornography. Available to anyone of any age. All you have to do is click. All you got to do is click. Here we go. Here's Cardi B doing her best porn star imitation, I guess. And I'll go that far, but no further on this program. Except, of course, that night when that guest of ours unexpectedly dropped his drawers and mooned the camera. But other than that, okay, so that's what people get upset about. And they feed that to us, don't they? But who's they? Mainstream, alternative, people that you think are on your side. Everybody's got something to sell you, it seems. To sell us. And the world is nuts, gone nuts. It's going nuts every day. You know, they call this alien technology X technology. Isn't that unusual? The references to X technology. And here's what the Twitter headquarters look like tonight. Thank you, Elon Musk. Champion of free speech. Tesla technology, they refer to it as well. You have to wonder, coincidence, not a coincidence? X technology, changing Twitter to X, Tesla, and then these references to this alien technology using exactly these phrases within the past week. Maybe it's divine intervention. Maybe not. And while all that is going on, the culture war continues. And here's Jason Aldean with a decision to sue Whoopi Goldberg because he's no racist. He says, in spite of the allegations, that he is engaging in racist behavior by releasing his hit song, Try That, in a Small Town. The mania continues. And over on CNN, the alien mania continues.
On January 8 of 2014, a fireball from space blazed through Earth's atmosphere and crashed into the sea north of Manus Island off the northeastern coast of Papua New Guinea. Its location, velocity, and brightness were recorded by U.S. government sensors and quietly tucked away in a database of similar events. Well, last month, Harvard theoretical astrophysicist Dr. Avi Loeb led an expedition that retrieved metallic fragments of the fireball off the western Pacific seafloor. Avi Loeb joins me now. He's the head of the Galileo Project and founding director of Harvard University's Black Hole Initiative. He's the best-selling author of Extraterrestrial, The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth. His new book, Interstellar, will be out next month. Dr. Loeb, do you believe the government is in possession of alien spacecraft?
Thanks for having me. Well, it's not a matter of belief. Either they have it or not. And if they do, I think it's inappropriate because it's just like stepping out to your backyard and finding a tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor and coming back home and telling your family members nothing about it. Basically, they don't know that we have neighbors. That is inappropriate because this has nothing to do with national security. It has a lot to do with science. We would like to know if we have neighbors in our cosmic environment.
What would be the motivation of the government trying to keep this under wrap? Is it fear of panic, fear in the country that would be unharnessed? What?
Well, my guess it has to do with the fact that they can't make sense of it, and perhaps they consulted some corporations that have the benefits of being paid by the Department of Defense. Otherwise, I cannot make any sense of it. So they might not have it. We just don't know. We have to see the evidence. David Grush was a second-hand witness. He heard other people talk about it, 40 of them, and they told him about the programs, but we would like to see the actual evidence before we believe it. And of course, I realized that going to the Pacific Ocean might be easier in terms of learning about interstellar space than listening to politicians in Washington, D.C.
I'm going to ask you about your trip in just a moment, but one follow-up. Yes, you're right. He's a degree, Grush. He's a degree of separation, it seems to me, from those we would most want to speak to. But nothing stays secret these days. Everybody writes a book. Is it really practical to think that we could have alien spacecraft in our possession and someone who'd touched it, feel it, seen it, wouldn't reveal that evidence?
Yeah, it's unlikely unless the government is so incompetent that it can't make any sense of it. So it was tucked deep under secrecy with only a small number of people aware of it. I simply don't know until the evidence will be presented. But the good news is, as a result of the hearing on Wednesday, David Grush promised to provide the details of the people who had first-hand experience with these programs. So presumably the representatives will get in touch with them, and we will get to the bottom of it in the coming months. So we just have to wait and see.
Take my final 60 seconds and tell me, what do you think you retrieved from the Pacific Ocean?
Some molten droplets from the surface of the object that crashed there. And they were roughly a millimeter in size, a milligram each. And now we are studying them at Harvard University using the best instruments that the world has to offer. We're collaborating with UC Berkeley, the Brooker Corporation, and the University of Technology in Papua New Guinea. And hopefully within a month, we'll know the composition. And we could tell if this material is different than the one we have in the solar system and whether it's technological in origin. We can, in principle, infer molten droplets from semiconductors, from computer screens, from stainless steel. Just think of it as Voyager colliding with another planet and burning up as a meteor.
Okay, enough of that. It's just mania. You don't know what to believe. This guy here now saying that they use magnets to retrieve some small pieces of appears to be metal from some sort of a crashed flying object. They're going to analyze that and determine if it's alien, possibly in origin, while at the same time casting doubt on what David Grush said during his testimony in front of Congress, which is also being, disputed by some of the other people investigating the UAP and the UFOs and the flying objects and the little green men, and who the heck knows what is going on. Neurotic. It's driving everyone neurotic. Don't drink the water, but drink 8 to 10 glasses a day. But don't drink the water because it could make you sick, give you cancer and die. But drink 8 to 10 glasses of water a day to stay hydrated. And everything, the way everything is going is just it just gets people jacked up and upset, depressed, and makes people question. Well, I don't know if it makes people question what, I don't know what it does. Like we heard in that documentary, I think people like to hear the doom and the gloom. They want to believe it. You want to believe it. In a way, I want to believe that the aliens are real. Heck, man, I grew up during the space age, the Apollo missions, Star Trek, Star Wars. Who doesn't want aliens to be real? I mean, that in itself is pretty darn exciting. But the way this is being ruled out, it sort of suggests bad things are happening. And What's the motivation behind it? Is it just to get us confused, or is it because they need some new enemy to point to justify their huge defense budgets? Or what is this about? We don't know. And even these people like David Grush and the two Navy pilots who testified, pretty clear to me that they're just pawns in a giant game, a giant psychological manipulation of some kind being played out. But it's being aimed at people. You think, again, people are thinking two-dimensionally. The people on even the freedom side, right, much more inclined to embrace the idea of extraterrestrial life. People in the QAnon movement, absolutely open to this idea, and many of them already have embraced the idea that Admiral Byrd and his expedition a long time ago, back in the 40s to Antarctic, and then, they believe that it went far beyond what even the Operation High Jump would have us believe. The public accounts of that they found underground tunnels that lead to giant bases where they have these aircraft and aliens and all this other stuff down there, and kids in cages, and I mean, you name it, right? So if you want to disrupt all of that, if you are the government and you have people believing this, or you see that people are being told this, and you want to disrupt that because you see it as some sort of a political threat, like maybe, the Trump campaign, a lot of those QAnon people, they stand at those rallies, they put their hand up in the air, making the number 1 symbol. And there are, a lot of them, a lot of people from the QAnon movement supporting Trump. So if you want to take out that movement, if you want to discredit it, what do you do? Well, it seems to me that what they might be doing is feeding it with information and testimony from people like David Grush to just jack up the mania. And then at some point, if the information they're feeding is not true, then they can point to them and say, and I think they've been doing this anyway, they say, well, you can't take them seriously because they're all nuts. When it's actually maybe their political opponent that is feeding them information that isn't factual, to take them a little bit too far over here where they believe in some stuff, right? And I think it's the same thing on the other side, where they take things to extremes and the beliefs are taken to extremes. And it gets to the point where you don't know what to believe anymore. And then all it takes to discredit someone, because it becomes almost like a religion. Politics is a very emotional thing anyway, regardless of what political group you might belong to. It becomes a community. And then from within that community, it can go beyond being just a community or even a family. It can become almost religious in nature, or even go beyond some form of religion, where if you don't subscribe, you will be excommunicated, exiled, cast out, no longer be allowed to be part of the religion because you have committed a sin. If you do not think like the rest of the people in the collective, if you don't subscribe to the unity. So in Canada, for instance, it's all about guilt through association on either side, right? Oh my goodness, if you say this, or you are part of this group, if you're seen with anyone from a freedom group, now you're a fascist. Or on the other side of things, if any politician at any time has ever been to Davos, then they are automatically disqualified as a viable contender to hold political office because they are now officially part of the WEF. So now you have all of these politicians, in particular Maxime Bernier of the PPC and Pierre Poilievre, squaring off against each other simply because they've been at the receiving end of allegations from political opponents through minions that they're both being accused of either, well, in Poilievre's case, they're saying that he was on the WEF website, although I've yet to find any credible evidence of that, any of it. And Bernier is being accused of having gone to Davos himself, and I know that's true. He has. When he was a cabinet part of the Harper government and in his cabinet, he went to Davos. So for a lot of people, that automatically disqualifies him, even though he's being presented as the alternative to the conservatives in Canada. Well, here's Pierre Poilievre talking about exactly this issue, and he's trying to fight back against these allegations because it's guilt through association.
ID in this country, and there will be no mandatory digital ID in this country, and I will ban all of my ministers and top government officials from any involvement in the World Economic Forum.
Okay. But then the mania has gotten to a place where people have said, well, we have to get Poilievre to address this issue. Where does he stand on Agenda 2030? And where does he stand on the WEF? And then when he comes out and he says that he's not going to allow any of his ministers to be part of the WEF, any of the cabinet ministers, and that he rejects digital ID and all of these things, you know what the reaction is that I hear all the time now? It's like, I don't believe him. Okay. So you wanted him to say what you wanted him to say. Then he said what you wanted him to say. And now you say you just don't believe him. What else can the guy do? He's in a no-win situation, right? In a no-win situation. He can't win. Or can he? Well, where did it go here? Here he is meeting a voter talking about this very thing. And, he is, Poilievre is a politician. No doubt about it. He knows what to say, how to say it. How effective will it end up being? How will it resonate with people? I don't know. But we'll start first with this clip, and then I'll show you what Maxime Bernier had to say in response to it.
So the Agenda 2030, first thing is you got to ask Maxime Bernier about that because he's part of the WEF. And
can I interject one?
I didn't interrupt you. So Bernier went to the WEF and then he lied about it. That was the worst part. I knew that he was part of the WEF, but he should have just owned up to it. And then he got caught lying. So if you look up this article by True North, where they caught him lying, and he lied to the people about his involvement. What else is he lying? So that's the.
Did Harper sign us into that though?
No, he wasn't forced to go. He went by.
No. He signed us into Agenda 2030, and Mulroney signed us into Agenda 2030.
No. But Bernier went to the WF on his own. So the.
So you can make your own assessment on that. A lot of people are going to say that it's not garbage, that Harper did sign us on to Agenda 2030. Okay, whatever. And here's Maxime Bernier. He says, I hope Pierre Poilievre continues to make the patently absurd claim that Bernier is part of the WEF. Every time he does, it shows how unserious and unfit to be prime minister he is, like the lying buffoon he wants to replace. Here are other things you can say about me, Pierre. Bernier supported COVID lockdowns. Bernier is in the pocket of the dairy lobby. Bernier has always defended big government. Bernier is a reptilian. Now, that sounds very Alex Jonesy, doesn't it? Bernier is a reptilian. Now we're getting back to reality and normality. That's the kind of politics I like. My goodness. Oh, my. It's just all these social issues. It's just everything, you know. The drag queen story times, the drugs, the biolabs in Ukraine, the virus, the biolab issue. Where did the virus come from? Man-made, natural, from bats? Was it engineered in some way? I mean, these are all questions being presented to people. And then today, what are we seeing? We're seeing that there was some sort of a secret Chinese lab operating out in California where they've uncovered. Let me see if I've got some pictures prepared for you. Here's this. It's like some sort of a private secret biolab that was operating in California. So local and federal authorities investigated this place for months. It's a warehouse in Fresno that appeared to be abandoned. They found some sort of a hose leading to it. It was unlicensed, full of lab mice, medical waste, hazardous materials. The Fresno County Public Health Department has been evaluating and assessing the activities at this unlicensed laboratory. And they found all kinds of biological agents there. They found coronavirus, HIV, hepatitis, and herpes, all being improperly stored. And I guess they were in there. Certain rooms of the warehouse were found to contain several vessels of liquid and various apparatus. According to court documents, they found blood, tissue, and body fluid samples, serums, thousands of vials of unlabeled fluids, and other biological materials. The mice at this facility were apparently kept in what the authorities are calling inhumane conditions. And the city has taken possession of those animals, euthanizing these mice. 175 were found dead. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention tested the substances and detected at least 20 potentially infectious agents, including, as I said, coronavirus, HIV, hepatitis, and herpes. So they're making different kind of testing kits in there for people as well. Kind of, just very weird. Another weird story. It just shows you how, and here's what it looked like inside the facility. This is what they found. Just more news today to drive you just a little bit loopy. How about Justin Trudeau? That guy can't win these days. The mania is catching up with him. Here's Trudeau. Went to pose for a selfie with this guy. Didn't quite go as planned.
Trudeau must go! Trudeau must go! Trudeau must go! Trudeau must go!
You got to be motivated to get out there and do that. That young guy was very motivated. So off he went, and he did it. Not good for Trudeau. Stay with me. I'll be right back. More ahead.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So what's the truth? Good luck. Good luck with that one. I think I just think we need to be careful. I think we need to stay grounded. I think it's going to be difficult to remain grounded because what they're doing to people is extremely effective. How do you tell the difference between what's right and what's wrong? How do you assess these things? Are there aliens or not? For me, this past week put it all on full display. We don't know what the true motivation behind a lot of this is. I do know that there's so much weird stuff going on in the world right now that it becomes very easy, or it's much easier for people who want to manipulate us to do exactly that, because they can feed you truth like 43,000-year-old worms that are then revived and they're still alive. They feed you a story like that and then they turn around and feed you sort of a half-truth, double twisted, jumbled up tale of aliens over here to prepare you for something. What that something is, we don't know. But it's important, I think, as well, for people to not allow yourself to let your personal bias, to let your emotions get the better of you, or your wishful thinking get the better of you, or even your addiction to the adrenaline that comes from consuming the ongoing onslaught, the never-ending supply of fear porn, and not allow that to manipulate you to the point where you become too open to accepting different kinds of information. A lot of people I speak with, I mean, they're all in on all of these different kinds of, and I hate to use the word conspiracy theory because I don't think that that's what they are. I think it's just distractions, misinformation, all designed to destroy within or to manipulate groups of people from within. Not by challenging you. You know, you would think that if you harbor beliefs, or if you believe in something that the government doesn't like, that you would think they would come straight at you and attack you on it and try to convince you otherwise, or maybe even just punish you and throw you in jail because just be done with you, right? I'm suggesting to you that while there may be some of that happening on the surface, the bigger game and the more effective strategy that they're employing is not to do that. It's to do the opposite. It's to feed you more of what they know you will consume so that your head gets filled with information that drives you a little bit loopy or takes you down a road where you are then later easily discredited, or it gets you so emotional that you engage in activities that get you into trouble. More than that, I think that, you're seeing people be led astray, not only just by the government, but it could be people even from within the group yourself or the people above your group who are also manipulating you to get you to act on their behalf as a useful idiot. That's really what wars are too, when you think about it. You have people in charge up at the top who, might maybe a dictator of a country or a leader or whatever country it is. They actually convince people to go and kill other people for them. And they do it with immunity. They say no one is above the law. Well, maybe not, but when the law is on your side and allows you to have other people killed, and you can even get other people to do it for you, then I guess you're not breaking the law, but they still convince people to do it every day, don't they? Happens in the world every single day. The world is an evil place. There's also good in it. There's good and there's evil. And there are people who do good things and there are people who do terrible things. There's balance, there's perspective, there's context, there is reality. In this information age, this age of information warfare, it is becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish between what is real and what isn't. We are all being manipulated, and I am suggesting to you that it's happening on both sides. Because there's not just both sides, there's all sides. There's a variety of political perspectives there. You have people with different points of view, all these different religions, cultures, different groups. But to one degree or another, we are all being manipulated. And I guess the message ultimately that comes out of this evening is that we don't want to let ourselves be manipulated to a point or scared. Don't let yourself become so filled with fear that you run off into the woods and try to live in a lean-to in sub-zero temperatures with only a tin can and to burn twigs in for heat. So you end up dying. These people who are manipulating others, all of us, they don't have your best interests in mind. And don't think it's just the government. It's political groups. It's other governments. It's different groups all latching on. And when they see a movement afoot, they'll inject. You might have something that starts organically and then a government gets involved and then they add to it because it's a group of people that they don't like. So they'll inject some information over here to screw with people's minds. And then it could be even a foreign actor, another government over here watching what's going on. And maybe they didn't even start it, but then they can inject some sort of social media messaging in there too to get it going even more, to disrupt things even more. And then somebody within the group itself can say, hey, I've got this going on. Or maybe it's even just a grifter, somebody who just wants money. And they see that if they just latch onto that narrative, if they make a thumbnail or say something on social media to get people jacked up even more, they'll get more clicks and more views and even get people to donate money. And people think that they're fighting or contributing and doing something to make a difference. And are they? Are you making a difference? Are you doing what's best for your family? Are you doing what's best for yourself? Are you doing what's right? Are you? Or are we all being manipulated to a point where, are you sure that what you think is the truth? Are you sure that these people telling you all of these other things, if I don't believe in the government, they're lying. Everything the government tells you is a lie. That's what you're being told too, right? Everything the government says is a lie. Therefore, everything this other guy's telling you must be the truth. Shades of gray, folks. I'm not buying that one either. Step back, think for yourself, be careful. Rule of thumb. And you are free to do what you want, believe what you want, think what you want. I'm not here to tell you exactly what to do. I'm just here to suggest to you that the rule of thumb, I think, these days has to be something like, am I acting in the best interests of myself and my family? Is what I'm doing truly in my best interests? If I do this, am I going to end up in jail? If I do this, will I get arrested? If I do this, might I get shot? How far do I go over here to do this? I talked to some people good people who have lost everything. Like literally, they've lost everything. They have become so passionate about their beliefs politically. They're so invested in various political ideas that they have lost touch with their families. They've become disengaged. Some people have even ended up in mental hospitals. They've lost their kids. They've lost their homes, their cars. They literally have ended up with nothing, and they're out on the street homeless because they're not grounded, because they're not really dealing in reality. And they are no longer able to effectively deal with the real world. Whether you're dealing or whether you choose to believe in a de facto or a de jure government, or whatever you want to believe, you still at the end of the day have to take care of yourself and take care of your family and deal with the reality of the situation. And that reality is that you can get yourself into a lot of trouble if you're not thinking clearly all the time. And our governments, yeah, they lie to us. Welcome to reality. It's just what they do because they have objectives. They need to get elected. Pierre Poilievre says, well, I have to win. If I want to become Prime Minister of Canada, I have to win. He's going to say what he has to say. They all do. They always will. Even if you replace all the guys you have in power right now, the next batch, they're going to do the same damn thing. I would suggest to you that a lot of them out there right now who are telling you that the ones who are in power right now need to be replaced, a lot of the ones who want to replace them are the ones working for those who want to replace them, who are being presented to you as leaders. They're just telling you what they have to tell you too. Because that's the way it works, man. So you got to think for yourself, do what's best for you as an individual. Take care of yourself first, and then you can take care of your friends and your neighbors and your community, your society, your country. Take care of yourself first. Make sure that you're healthy. Make sure that you're happy. Take care of things on the home front. Take care of your relationships at home with your family. Hold them close and hold them dear. And once you get all that straightened away and you've cleaned up your room, then go out, make the world a better place, if you can. And don't let too much of this stuff online get inside your head too much. If there are aliens, my guess is government or no government, they'll present themselves. Isn't that really the reality of it? Reality will eventually present itself and the truth will come out. If the aliens want us to know that they're here, they'll tell us. They'll show themselves. They don't need the government. Obviously, their technology is supposed to be superior anyway. So why is it up to the government to tell us this anyhow? Somebody's not telling the truth, which means somebody's lying. Or maybe a whole bunch of people are. Or maybe they're all telling the truth, but not the whole truth. It's just a little after 8 p.m. I'm going to wrap up for tonight. We'll be back at 9 p.m. Same Maverick time, not different Maverick time, 9 p.m., same Maverick channel for Lori and Strange Bedfellows and a number of guests, including Jose Vega. And they're going to be talking about a variety of things, but mostly, I guess, the Schiller Institute and subjects that are going to weave their way through a lot of, in an indirect way, what we're talking about here tonight. The founder of the Schiller Institute, accused over decades of being one of the original conspiracy theorists. So I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. How was I going to phrase that tonight, getting the broadcast set up? They represent they are a small fringe minority with unacceptable views in the view of the government. It's been that way for a long time. If you're not familiar with what the Schiller Institute is, I think Alex Jones actually, I think he gets some of his talking points directly from their ideology. So you're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be an interesting program in less than an hour right here on the Maverick News Channel. Strange Bedfellows with Laurie Spencer coming back at you. And I may join in on the conversation at some point as well. So I will see you back here shortly on the Maverick News Channel. Thanks, everybody, for watching tonight. I hope you found it useful. Hope it made you think. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.